Time now for this week's Health Matters. Paul Critz with you. I've got, of course, PA Lynn Szabo, host of Health Matters, and we have a guest today, a fitness professional, Ken Dobberpuhl. Lynn, why did you invite Ken in the studio today?
I invited him because I became aware of a recent talk he gave through the CalFresh people that was mostly online. I think it was Zoom and then also landed on YouTube. But and he's talking about movement and how important it is and how we can help people. You know, most of the time we've been walking since we were, about 12 months old, and we don't think about it. But falls are a huge problem with people as they age, or if they have some kind of unfortunate diagnosis earlier on. And there's an independence issue that I think is quite important here. I don't think this is something that we have a lot of resources around here. So when I saw Ken, his talk really caught my eye.
Well, Ken, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
So a fitness professional, what does that mean? Just if you could take us through your professional life briefly here.
Well, I had a change of career at the age of 50 and decided to blend my two passions, which were teaching. I used to be a biology teacher, and I was a master's athlete for decades, and so I've always loved fitness. So I blended those and became a trainer, and eventually opened my own studio, and then through various life changes and so forth, I ended up coaching or teaching at a junior college for a while. And I've most recently been doing more volunteer work because I'm pretty much retired, trying to make older adults aware of the importance of movement, like Lynn said, and because, well, basically we want two things older adults want. They want to maintain their independence for as long as possible, and they want to avoid a fall, because we all know the negative consequences of that.
It's almost, I don't mean this to sound as glib as, but it's stereotypical. It's like somebody is doing fine, and an older person is doing fine, has a fall, and then all of a sudden everything changes for them.
Life changes.
Yeah. It is such a catastrophic event in someone's life.
And it's very insidious. You know, we think we're fine. We're going along, and then all of a sudden we do trip or slip, or maybe we have a medication issue. We stand up, we get dizzy, and we collapse. So it's really, I guess, part of my message is the best defense is a good offense. That we need to start being aware of this while we're still both cognitively and physically able to make some changes, and we can throughout life. We know this. I've worked with hundreds of people in my career that are older, and just a little bit of input on a daily basis to practice some of these movement skills, maintain their strength, work on their balance a little bit, can have huge positive effects.
I'm 55, and I've been a pretty active person. Just recently, though, as kind of the chickens have come home to roost physically, as things become more chronic on me, I've realized I have the suspicion that maybe I've been walking wrong my whole life for my body. Is that a thing? I haven't been standing right, and I'm kind of off center now and twisted a little bit all the time.
Well, we can develop structural issues. We all sit too much.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the greatest things that people, if they can become aware of it, because sitting does nothing good for us.
No.
The other thing in our current culture with phones, mobile devices, people are hunched over. They're degrading their posture. Yeah, they're not paying attention, walking into things, or falling off curbs or whatever.
It's an idea for a future show is the danger of walking into things.
Yeah.
We can do that.
But, so these are all feeding into poor posture. And then virtually everything we do, whether it's typing on a keyboard or driving, our hands are forward, which pulls our shoulders and head forward. And this forward head posture just is not a good thing. Gravity will win eventually.
Yeah, right.
So we really have to be conscious of our posture and staying upright.
What can somebody do then before the onset of these issues? Somebody younger who hasn't faced these yet. How can I hopefully address address my own gait issues so that I don't have to fear falling and all of that later on?
Well, part of the issue, believe it or not, is our footwear. Mm-hmm. Most people opt for comfort, and I understand that, but more time if they can, when you're younger and you're able to. I like to see people be in the grass at the park barefoot.
Really?
You get a lot more, the fancy word for it is proprioception, but that's basically just the body's ability to feel the ground
Right.
and those uneven surfaces.
Does that make your joints and everything then subsequently more responsive if you're more in touch with the ground and can feel every
right,
contour?
because you're tuning up your nervous system.
Okay.
And this is one of the things I see with some of the older adults I'll observe at the gym. It's great that they're in there. It's great that they're riding a stationary bike or on a treadmill or an elliptical. But it's not, while you may be getting cardiovascular benefit from it, it's certainly better than sitting, they're not really using their nervous system to adjust to level changes, uneven surface, or rough textural issues on the ground, real balance issues as they move from left to right or up or down or whatever they're doing. So I think this is a mistake to spend an inordinate amount of time on machines like that where it's just this predictable, repetitive motion. Life doesn't really happen that way, and we get into trouble when we do go out in the real world. We're not paying attention, trip on a parking curb or something like that, which is a very, very common injury for older people.
Pretty bad one, too.
Yeah, I mean, you break wrists, you separate shoulders.
You smash your head.
Hit your head. I mean, none of these are good outcomes.
Right. So what sort, I know, so you say footwear, so is the thing to do then not to wear footwear?
Well,
or are
the
there
thing
things that are
is,
better?
there are a lot of, there's a couple of shoe companies. I don't know, should I pimp?
Yeah,
pimp
let's
one?
do it.
There's one company that I've looked at. It's called Zero Footwear, and they make zero profile shoes, which means that they don't have very exaggerated thick heels on them. So you're in a more balanced position. For a long time, the Vibram 5-finger toed shoes were very popular. That's another example where you're getting at least minimal protection, because a lot of us have lost those little fat pads when we used to walk around and run around barefoot as kids. Mm-hmm. I know I could cross anything. Now I'm, across the street, I'm going, oh God, that hurts.
Yeah, I'm a tenderfoot too.
Yeah. So, but if they can practice a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about here at home, barefoot, if they don't have neuropathy or other contraindications, I think it's a good idea to get out of your shoes and let those toes spread out and let your foot feel whatever surface you're on.
Kind of let your foot be a foot.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So subsequent to footwear then, and thinking about, moving sort of in that kind of, off an axis kind of 3D and reacting to your own balance and the contours of reality around you. What else then can you do besides going barefoot to strengthen yourself and hedge against the future?
Well, I think that
fight off gravity. Sorry.
Well, there's three issues that I think need to be addressed. We need to work on both static and dynamic balance. So static balance is, as it indicates, standing on one foot. Like if you're standing to put your pants on, most older people will opt to sit down. I'm trying to stubbornly keep putting my clothes on in a standing position just because it's just another opportunity to practice. And obviously, all of this has to be done with safety in mind. You have to start where you're at. I'm not suggesting everybody start standing on one foot trying to get dressed and end up falling in their own house, trying to get into their pants. But that's just an example. But beyond static balance, I think the more important type of balance that gets overlooked is dynamic balance. And this requires both what we call the eccentric or deceleration strength to slow ourselves if we do trip, to catch ourselves, that requires our nervous system to be trained to be able to fire. And if we don't practice dynamic balance, like, for example, standing with both feet together, taking a step forward on your right foot, keeping your left foot off the ground for a count of 1, 2, 3, and then stepping back and alternating. That would be an example of dynamic balance going forward and back.
Okay.
Now, and these can be practiced in a doorway where it's nice and safe. That's a good place for a lot of people to start. Also, if you turn the other way in the doorway and step left foot, hold the right foot up in the air, count 1, 2, 3, then shift over to the right, 1, 2, 3 with the left foot up. That's an example of lateral movement. And where I'm going with this is 3 planes of motion. And then as people are comfortable with going forward and back in that plane of motion and laterally, then they can explore rotation, where you're facing the door and then making a 90-degree step to your left or to the right. And again, being able to land on that foot, soften your knee. This is probably one of the biggest things that's hard for people. Yeah, if your knee's locked, if you start to get your center of gravity outside of your base of support, you're going to go over.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Can I just put in? Because
Yes.
when I fall, the first thing I try and do is like lock all my joints so that
That's how you break things.
that's how you break things.
And it's a hard instinct to break.
Yeah.
It's a hard instinct.
Watch basketball, watch the NBA. All of those guys are taught how to hit the floor.
Right.
And people go, it looks like they're flopping because they hit the floor and they slide and they don't put their hands down and they're just taught to fall and fall on their butts, fall on their shoulders, don't
Right.
stick a hand out. Don't
of course,
do
I
that.
would only watch Duke.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sure it's good. That's just watch good basketball.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay.
So that's a good point, Lynn. Most people instinctively will lock their knees, and it brings your center of gravity up even higher so that if you do fall, you've got further to fall. So what I try to teach is this concept of soft knees. So I have people lock their knees. Everybody knows what that feels like. And then I said, just relax, just let them soften. So if you're in a varied terrain situation, say you're out tide pooling or on some other uneven surface, if you kind of move like you were a teenager sneaking into the house trying to be quiet, keeping those knees really bent, keeping your center of gravity low, if you do fall, it's less likely going to be catastrophic.
Right.
So we want to have...
Well, so I mean, and the way I'm trying to imagine what you're describing, feeling, as I'm sitting here in this chair, right? But with the knee, it's like it's not locked. It's flexed slightly, but you're tensed, right? I mean, all the muscles around it are basically like
In ready
holding
mode.
everything in
Right.
place, right?
You're signaling
Not like
to the
you're just
brain that it's,
ready.
There's
in case.
it's ready.
Yeah. Okay.
And so within that context, if you're able, as you walk, like people can do an exaggerated walk if they can practice at home. Just say, every time I cross the living room, I'm going to sneak across the living room by taking a left step, holding the right foot up, and then taking a right step and alternating and holding it for long enough to own the position, not just blow past it.
Right.
Because momentum is normally our friend, but if you don't have the strength to control it, then that's a problem. So this, just a simple, exaggerated, slow walking and balancing briefly for just a couple of seconds will develop eccentric strength, the ability to decelerate.
Are you familiar with Monty Python at all?
Oh yeah, silly walking. John, please. I'm with you.
Is that a good activity? You practice silly walks?
I do that when I was teaching a Better Bones and Balance class. Sometimes we'd, if we're, it's kind of a scripted class, so you're kind of on 30 seconds on and 15 seconds off. But every once in a while, I would say, all right, everybody, we're going to do some silly walking, and we go out in the hall and just make up stuff, or I'll have a student make up a walking pattern. But the thing is to make sure that you're practicing those movements in 3 planes of motion, and start, in a doorway as you get more confident, or using like hiking poles or some sort of aid if you need it, that's perfectly fine. Just start where you're at. Don't, try to think you're 20 again and, I can do that, and then end up hurting yourself. So, it's about progression.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah, that's okay. I've been meaning to do this more, like according to Hoyle broadcast stuff. You're tuned to KFUG. We're discussing gait and motion. Health Matters is the show. We're discussing gait and motion with Ken. I've got my glasses. With Ken Dobberpuhl. That's it. There we go. Who is a fitness professional and going through the things you can do to avoid being uncertain about yourself physically as you age. And this is something that I'm very much just in the last 5 years. Yeah, when I jump, when I move, when I do and move, it's just not there anymore. And I'm very much afraid, like in the past being younger, I remember, jumping and doing, you don't think about it. Now, even in the motion, I'm going, I hope this ends okay. And so I'm looking for exactly what you're offering here. Just that sort of, a little bit more certainty in my head, modally. So what else? I mean, you're talking about the expanding into 3 planes of motion. I mean, that's exactly what you don't get on a treadmill or with a machine or anything. Where else? What's the next step here? Well,
and one other strength exercise that's fundamental to maintaining our independent lifestyle is the ability to get out of a chair, off the toilet, which is essentially a squatting pattern. And the most basic movement that is rarely taught in school or in a lot of strength training programs is how to properly, what we call hip hinge. So if you imagine standing with your back to a wall or a solid surface, maybe your heel's about 6 to 8 inches away, being able to push your butt back and touch the wall and then bring it back. Because and then progressively going out a little bit further until you're at about the distance of the length of your foot. Okay. So say if you have a 12-inch or a 14-inch foot like I do, then I would be that far away. And being able to bend forward, push those hips back, touch the wall, and come back. And in that hip hinge, you're learning how to squat correctly, because a lot of people, the first thing they do is push their knees forward, which is not only hard on the knees, it creates what we call a shear force on the patella and is painful, especially if somebody has arthritis or that type of thing.
And don't you think in a lot of elders, they have what we call clinically proximal muscle?
Yes.
Proximal muscle weakness.
Yes.
So that's kind of the muscles that are in your thigh but closest to the core of your body. Those seem to be MIA after a certain age, so this would be helpful.
Well, and I have a passion for glutes. Those are butt muscles, for those that don't know that. And that's where the game is played. Yeah, you need quad strength. Yeah. That's going to come. But all the stability comes for the knee and the ankle, those lower parts of our extremities. The stability to control those comes from your hip. From your glutes.
From the glutes. So it's like the posterior chain. Is that what we're talking about?
Oh, you speak my language.
Like a little bit.
You must have taken some kinesiology there.
So my back hurts all the time, and I've tried to understand why. So,
so yes, that posterior chain needs to be strong. And so simple movements like a wall sit, where you actually push your back against the wall, slide down as close to parallel as you can. That may not be very far at first, but you're getting glute activation and some quads. But you're not really going to turn those glutes on until you start to squat either down to parallel or when you just shift to one leg, like that soft knee we were talking about. When you're standing and you shift over to one leg, as soon as you shift, if you have your hand and palpate your glutes, you'll feel it come on.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of waking them up. Most of our population has what I call glute amnesia, or what was there a technical term used, Lynn?
Oh, proximal muscle wasting.
Yeah, proximal muscle wasting. So that's the fancy medical one, but it can come back. I mean, it just needs to be activated by movement. So practicing getting up and down from a chair, or if you need, if you can't do that, then you build it up, put a phone book or two under there. Well, we don't really have phone books anymore, but
Yeah, right. What do you do?
put something, some kind of pad to raise it up and practice there. So the main thing is learning to squat. I know this is difficult on the radio to explain this, but learning to push the hips back, keep your back flat, push the hips back first before you bend your knees. And so that as you come down, your knees are not going out past your toes, basically.
What I've learned, okay, so during the pandemic, I've had for years and years I was tall and a runner for a while, and so that translated into lower back issues for me as I've gotten older, and some injuries too. During the pandemic, the initial lockdown, I started doing all of these sort of like body weight exercises and things, and working on posterior chain, working on my butt basically and my hamstrings, because those were weak.
Yes.
And I've alleviated my back issues just with that. And what I would do is I'll do like leg lifts, like on my stomach with my, hips off of something and just lifting like that, and just basically every time. With squats, it's hard to do for me because everybody always just sort of fires up their thighs and they think they're doing a squat. But when we talked about coming like lower or parallel, that means your upper thigh parallel with the floor. You've got to get your butt down that low before you engage all the way up, right?
And then as you come up, consciously thinking of driving through your hips, driving, because the hips, like I said, that's really where the game is played.
Now, these sorts of things, now you talked about, these are things we've talked about in the context of exercises, activities, things you can do as a younger person. What if you're already an older person and you're experiencing, weakness and issues and worried about this? Can you start with these same exercises just at your own skill level?
Yes, it's always about progression. So if you can't squat, one of the easiest ways to start practicing is putting come up to a kitchen sink and wrap your fingers over the edge where the sink is, so you've got something to hang on to, or a railing, whatever is solid and isn't going to go anywhere, and learn to start pushing those hips back and exploring how deep you can go to parallel. Ultimately, if you start doing this young enough, many cultures sit in a deep squatted position for recreation. That's how they eliminate.
Is this the Asian squat that people talk about? That's where you sit all the way down with your feet flat.
And to your back issues, those cultures have no back problems.
Right.
It's chairs, it's sitting, it shortens our hip flexors, which are attached to our spine. And when we stay in that position for a long period of time, when we stand up, it's like, so tight. Well, we have to break that pattern. So
should I get a standing desk?
Well, that's not a bad.
It's not a bad
choice.
idea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or sitting on a stability ball, a bigger ball. So it's active movement. You're not just, as I like to say, taking the shape of your container.
Right.
Where we do that.
That's funny.
That is good.
So.
So where are we here? We've got some time left. One thing I don't want to forget. I want to make sure that we mention before we finish here today where these videos are that you've done with Sonny Baker and the CalFresh, and where people can go and watch these videos.
Well, they're on the CalFresh Facebook page.
Okay.
So if they go in there, I don't know the exact banner title, but it should say something about creating a fall-resistant body.
So these videos at the DelnorCalFresh.org website, what are you covering? It looks as if there's a whole bunch of smaller videos. The second pillar, third pillar, what are these? How are these arranged?
Well, I did a series called The 4 Pillars of Human Movement.
Okay.
And these are 4 elements that all able-bodied people should be able to do functionally and correctly.
Wow, okay.
The first pillar is gait or locomotion, which is part of what we've been talking about with fall prevention. We want to make sure that we have good movement mechanics, walking forward, being able to step side to side or rotate, those things. So the first pillar is gait or locomotion. The second is level changes, which would include things like squatting, deadlifting, or that hip hinge we were referring to. The third pillar would be pushing and pulling, because we need to be able to push and pull things throughout our life.
Right.
And then the last pillar, which is pretty much never talked about, is rotation. But rotation is where all power comes from. Even walking is technically a rotational movement, because you've got it's a contralateral movement. Your hips are moving side to side. It looks like you're just going straight, but you are moving forward, but through a rotation.
Yeah.
If we swing an axe to split wood, that's a rotational pattern. Chopping, some lifting patterns, or swinging a golf club, a tennis racket, those are all rotational, where the hips and shoulders need to be able to move together. And so that's what was discussed there. And then I talk about drills and movements that will support those. Because the whole point of those videos was to help people create an exercise program that supports their activities of daily living. So my activities of daily living, they are going to be different than yours and different than Lynn's. And so we need to kind of self-evaluate, what do we want or need to be able to do? And some of these are pretty obvious, like we've discussed, getting up and out of a chair, being able to lift something off the floor safely. Maybe we bought a bag of birdseed that weighs 25 or 40 pounds. Can we pick it up off the floor safely without hurting our back? And that's where this hip hinge comes in, because most people will round their back and then subsequently hurt themselves. So that's where the movement patterns, we go into a lot of depth on that. And then there's the fall resistance videos that we shot that have some overlap with that, but it's more oriented towards fall resistance and also fall prevention, which I should make that distinction of making sure that the home is safe, that there's adequate lighting, there's slip strips in the bathroom, there's safety rails, and there's some great, just about, AARP, National Institute of Health, CDC, they all, if you just type into a Google search, home safety checklist, there's a number of sites out there that will give you a checklist that you or a family member can go through your house with you and make sure that you don't have throw rugs, dogs' toys and pets are a big issue. It's really about being aware of that physical environment, which is part of fall prevention. But then we've been mostly focused today on creating that fall resistant body through improving static and dynamic balance, making sure that we have the strength, the eccentric strength to slow ourselves or decelerate if we do trip and we start to fall forward, that we can get that other foot out there and catch ourselves, ideally. And these types of things are of a lot more practical value.
Looking at the home it seems that's got to be such a challenge too. I mean, in so many ways, like as Lynn was talking about, I believe off mic, we were saying before, we learn these, and we said this in the show, we learn all of this stuff unconsciously. So you have to look at something that you don't ordinarily look at, recognize an issue with it, and that's got to be compounded when you're looking at your own home that hasn't been an issue for you for perhaps decades, and then all of a sudden you have to start looking at it as maybe
like stairs.
Right, exactly. And now,
or most people don't look at their little dogs as all risks.
Right.
It's just the cute little guy that you have to go feed.
Or the little rope knots that you step on in the dead of night and twist yourself up. Yeah, wow. Is there, what sort of resources are there available besides the videos that you've made? And this is a question for you as well, Lynn. Just here locally, where can people go to get some sort of expertise here? Is there anything? Is there, other than being... having to go to
that my take on it is slightly different because I use movement abnormalities to help diagnostic understanding. And so I do send people to physical therapy for gait evals. I have not found this as fruitful as this discussion was.
Really?
So super happy to have you here. But how would you respond?
Well, I mean, physical therapists are in probably the best position to properly evaluate somebody's gait or other physical limitations. The problem is most people can't afford to go to a physical therapist. There are occupational therapists would be another outlet.
Are they available up here?
Well, I don't know
Maybe
what
at the
the local resources are. I know there are occupational therapists in the system. And, this is where I think community ed classes like the one I was teaching and this Better Bones and Balance, things like that are, if you've got those in your community, those are a good resource for people that are should be trained and knowledgeable on how to progress folks safely.
Well, now you approached Sunny Baker and what she's doing with CalFresh as a volunteer, and just sort of, this was your idea. I can do these videos for you if you like. Or?
Yeah, because I've done this kind of thing before, and it duplicates me in a way that I can't be all over the place. So it gives people access to at least the information. And then, if you can find a fitness professional who has experience working with older adults and is aware of these limitations and is not just going to give them a bodybuilding program and have them sitting on a bench doing curls or something, which is not going to get the job done. We can use that resource too, but you really have to kind of vet those folks because everybody comes at it from a different perspective. Movement classes like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong often are taught in a community ed setting, and those are a good movement practice that's safe, slow, and so forth. That being said, those older adults that are able to and are active, that play tennis or golf and things like that, I really try to encourage them to do quicker movements. Even a person who can't do them standing, just moving your feet fast from a chair, I call it fire feet, like boom, 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 really quick, moving the feet in and out. You're training the nervous system. This is what slows down. It's kind of like a poor internet connection as we age. If we don't keep firing those neurons, they get lazy or forget or just turn off. Literally turn off.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm thinking about like the resources that might be available here to find for folks who want to find out more. I mean, it sounds like the question just comes back down to you. Do you have any more plans for other content or programs or classes or something for the community?
How can we get the word out?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
first off, I don't want to sign him up for a whole bunch of. I mean, he said he's basically retired, and then here we are looking for more.
No, well, I'm actually I am available to. I guess my preferred method right now, because I haven't been really willing to commit to classes. I live up in Brookings, actually. But I am willing to go and do workshops for any organization.
Wow, okay.
Just let me know, and if
so, like the senior center or somebody here could engage you to come down. And do, wow, okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm happy to do workshops, and that way, especially now that things have loosened up a little bit for a while, I hope.
Right.
And we can have face-to-face things, because it's really important. To be able to see people move, you can make corrections quickly. There's a pretty big disconnect between what we think we're doing and what we're actually doing. So having somebody that can watch the movement and kind of clean it up quickly, because you don't want to practice incorrectly. It's not going to be as efficient, and the potential for hurting yourself is greater.
Right. That was the question about being is it possible to learn to walk incorrectly? I will close my eyes and just standing someplace, close my eyes and go, okay, I am standing, everything is facing forward. I feel that. I'm squared. Right? And then I open my eyes and I just look down at my body, and a foot is turned here. My hips are turned a little. My shoulders might be off. I mean, I am not squared. So what feels symmetrical to me in my mind is not.
That's what I find with my yoga practice.
Really? How so? What do you find?
That helps, because you have to have a mindfulness of your proprioception, or where your body is in space, to make a foundation for a pose. And the teacher I follow emphasizes that, and I think that really helps.
And you'll notice, like doing a tree pose in yoga, if you're on your right foot, maybe you're golden. You can hold that forever.
It'll be different. Yeah.
You switch to your left, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
Who's in control here?
I have one of those. Yeah.
So we are asymmetrically functional by design. We're right-handed, or so we have these tendencies, these patterns that we've developed. So that's why it's really important. I'm a huge fan of like single leg training when people are ready for it, because that's really where you can start to strengthen up or balance out those imbalances.
Right. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
That's it. I find there's like a whole half of my body that's weaker than the other half.
And, with a lot of the postural stuff, some of it is tissue work that needs to be done, like myofascial release is a kind of a fancy word for it, or people are maybe familiar with the term Rolfing, where you're working on that fascial tissue, because if these lines of stress tend to cross our bodies. So the left shoulder talks to the right hip.
Right.
And so we can get these, kind of tweaky things going if we're not aware of it.
Right.
And sometimes it's just a matter of loosening up that fascial tissue a little bit and, allowing the body to come back into alignment.
And you're referencing with Rolfing the kind of deep tissue massage that can make you weep.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. But it's effective.
I would like to. Yeah, actually, I'd like to be able to do that. I don't think there's any way to do that here.
Well, there's a lot of self myofascial release techniques using foam rolls, tennis balls.
Okay.
Especially things on the feet are really good, like the little spiky balls. Rolling your foot on that helps stimulate the foot. Innervatically. Also, it just feels good once you get used to the initial pressure there. But it's there's a lot of different simple tools that you can use on yourself. It's a matter of mapping your body and finding out where you hold tension.
Right, and how best to do that for you.
Yeah.
To see Ken's videos that he's done with the local CalFresh folks, Sonny Baker, you can go to Del Norte CalFresh. Let me make absolutely certain I'm remembering that one correctly. Yes, delnortecalfresh.org/physical-activity. Down at the bottom, there's a lot of videos about yoga and other things. Down at the bottom of the page, they've stacked all of Ken's videos here, so you can watch through. It's Ken Dobberpuhl, fitness professional in the community. Is there anything that we didn't ask? Anything you want to leave our listeners with today, Ken?
Well, I just would encourage people to try to take stock of their current status in terms of their physicality, and try to, look at these videos and try to start working on some of these movement patterns and working on balance. I think that'd be a good first step for a lot of people.
So there is hope, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
There's no matter how mobility impaired, there's hope.
Right. Well, we used to think that, brain cells didn't repair. Now we know they do.
Right.
So my personal belief is that the human body wants to be in balance. It wants to move comfortably. And we just need to listen, and then find out where we're at in that continuum of how well we are moving and where we want to go, and start progressively working towards that.
All right. Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you
Lynn,
for having
anything
me.
else?
I'm going to be returning to COVID vaccination next week. There's some
As a topic, because we've got the new one coming out.
New exciting things. How to manage your fall vaccination schedule.
Oh, good, because that's exactly what I need to do. I'm due for another one, so right on. All right, okay. Lynn Szabo, PA, thank you so very much, and we'll be back next week for the next Health Matters.
Thanks.